They called him the Ghost. No fingerprints, no trace, no witnesses, just empty vaults and panicked faces. Over a decade, he stole over $500 million worth of diamonds, yet never once fired a weapon. In the criminal underworld, he was a myth wrapped in mystery, a figure mothers used to scare their jewelers and Interpol used as a case study in failure. But the Ghost was real. And his real name? No one knew for sure. Some said he was French, others said Serbian. Some believed he was ex-military. Others swore he was a magician turned criminal. Authorities gave him a code name, Dante Sombra, Latin for shadow of judgment. A name as poetic as it was terrifying. His first recorded heist happened in Amsterdam, where the famed De Vries diamond brokerage lost a $30 million pink diamond. There were no signs of forced entry. The cameras showed only static during the 3-hour window of the robbery. The vault was locked from the inside. When the guards opened it the next morning, all they found was a single white playing card, the ace of spades, taped to the safe wall. Then came Paris, Geneva, Abu Dhabi, Mumbai. In every case, high-end vaults were left wide open with no alarms, no broken locks, and no digital trails. He had no pattern. Sometimes he struck from rooftops, other times from underground tunnels. Once, he even managed to steal a shipment mid-flight from a private jet. Authorities started to whisper, "This isn't just a thief, this is a genius with nerves of steel." The public was fascinated. He became a global enigma, and some even admired him, robbing the rich without ever hurting anyone. Documentaries, books, even Hollywood screenplays tried to guess who he was and how he pulled it off. He became legend. But legends fall. The fall came in Singapore, where a billion-dollar diamond exhibition was being held under fortress-level security. Over 200 armed guards, facial recognition gates, laser grid motion sensors. Still, Dante Sombra managed to steal the Nightfire diamond, a cursed blood-red gem said to be priceless. But this time, he made a mistake. The escape route was compromised by a sudden electrical failure. Some say it was sabotage from a former crew member. Others say it was fate. He was caught trying to blend in with the crowd in a janitor's uniform. Cameras caught him. Interpol tackled him. His capture was broadcast live. It was the moment the world had been waiting for. They paraded him through courtrooms like a trophy. Dozens of countries filed charges. He never spoke a word during any of the hearings. Not one. Just silence and a cold smile. His eyes, though, sharp, intelligent, always watching, never stopped scanning his surroundings. Eventually, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole in the most secure prison in the world, Blackthorn Dungeon, a subterranean facility built inside an inactive volcano, surrounded by steel, AI surveillance, pressure sensors, and 24/7 drone patrols. No one had ever escaped from it, not even once. The Ghost, they believed, would rot there forever. But 2 years later, he was gone. No alarms were triggered. No guards noticed anything. The cameras showed nothing unusual. One morning, during a routine cell check, his room was empty, just like his heists, and taped to the wall a single ace of spades. Officially, it was called Blackthorn Correctional Facility. Unofficially, it was known by another name, the Dungeon. Built 400 feet beneath a dormant volcano in an undisclosed location, it was designed to hold only the worst of the worst, war criminals, rogue intelligence agents, and people like Dante Sombra, the Ghost, no natural light. No fresh air, no windows. The dungeon was a prison not just of steel and stone, but of silence, pressure, and psychological warfare. Every square inch was built to prevent escape and erase identity. Each inmate lived in an isolated cell monitored by motion sensors, retina scans, thermal tracking, and AI behavior analytics. The guards didn't speak. The prisoners weren't allowed to speak. Most broke within months. Some never came back from the quiet cells, where soundproof walls turned sanity into a memory. Dante, however, didn't flinch. He walked into the prison like he was checking into a hotel. Calm, controlled, observant. They shaved his head. They took his fingerprints. They gave him a numeric identity, inmate 081-9X7. His cell was the deepest in the complex, level 0, reserved for the highest risk individuals. No one had ever escaped level 0. No one had even tried. Security in the dungeon was multi-layered. A guard station checked vitals and movement every hour. Walls were lined with graphene-infused concrete, unbreakable and immune to drilling or acid. Every door required 3 levels of biometric clearance: palm, retina, and neural response. The corridors were patrolled by autonomous drones equipped with tranquilizers and motion tracking. In theory, even blinking too fast in the wrong place could get you sedated, and still, somehow, he vanished. 2 years passed after his sentencing. During that time, Dante never requested visitors, never spoke, never wrote. He ate what he was given, followed the routine, and behaved as though his spirit had been broken. The guards began to relax, whispering that maybe the ghost was just a man after all, until the morning of October 4th. At 6 a.m., the system triggered its routine biometric check. All cells responded with live vitals, except one. Cell 081-9. X7 showed a heartbeat reading, retinal presence, and thermal activity, but when guards opened the cell at 0603, it was empty. No broken locks, no tampering, no tools or traces. The cameras showed a figure lying on the bed all night, unmoving. But that figure, later confirmed to be a 3D printed replica, complete with heating coils and implanted eye tissue, wasn't human. It was a decoy. Worse, none of the exit doors had been opened. There were no alerts, no missing access logs, no staff anomalies. The ghost had simply disappeared. Panic exploded through Interpol, the prison administration, and every intelligence agency that had a stake in his imprisonment. An international manhunt began instantly. Borders were locked down. Airports, seaports, and private airfields were put on alert. Surveillance satellites were redirected. Bounties were issued. But there were no sightings, no digital footprints, no DNA. Nothing except one thing. Hidden in the corner of the cell, behind a loose stone in the wall, was a playing card. The ace of spades. Again, who helped him? How did he bypass AI sensors? Was the dungeon compromised from the inside? Or worse, was this part of a plan all along? The world only had one answer. The ghost was back. From there, Dante entered a maintenance tunnel. His neural signature and thermal imprint were cloaked by a system-wide recalibration sequence triggered by Volkov's code. The prison AI thought it was a scheduled diagnostic sweep. By the time the guards opened the cell at 6:03, Dante had been gone for almost 4 hours. And Volkov? Gone too. His workstation abandoned, his glasses left on the desk. Surveillance footage of his final hours showed only glitchy frames and corrupted files. But in the background, blurred just enough to escape face-matching software, was the faintest smirk from a man in a janitor's uniform. They didn't need to meet in the open. They didn't need to speak. Because when two phantoms work together, one inside the walls, the other inside the code, escape isn't just possible, it's inevitable. It began like any other night in Blackthorn Dungeon, quiet, cold, and automated. Guards were stationed behind reinforced barriers, watching screens fed by a dozen AI-monitored camera feeds. Drones hovered silently through corridors. Cell locks remained sealed, untouched by human hands. And yet, at 2:13 a.m., everything changed. Not with a bang, not with chaos, with silence. The cell of inmate 081-9X7, Dante Sombra, remained undisturbed. On camera, he appeared asleep, still as a statue. His vital signs streamed normally across the system. His pulse, his respiration, his body temperature. All perfectly human, but none of it was real. The man in the bed was a 3D printed replica, one constructed piece by piece over months. It contained synthetic muscle-like fibers, heat coils, and even biologically grown corneal tissue, smuggled in and assembled with surgical precision by machines hidden in the walls. The decoy wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It only needed to fool the system for a few hours. And with Volkov posing as Doctor Voss controlling the sensors from inside the nerve center, it did exactly that. At that exact moment, behind the wall of Dante's cell, a concealed maintenance shaft silently opened. The stone wasn't real. It was a plasma-sculpted panel built to mimic volcanic rock. Behind it, a narrow crawl space ran parallel to the prison's plumbing infrastructure. Unused, unmapped, forgotten by nearly everyone except the original designers. And now, Volkov. Dante slid into the shaft in complete darkness, guided only by a fiber-optic thread light embedded in his sleeve. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. For a man known to plan robberies years in advance, this moment was simply another step in a blueprint drawn long ago. Volkov, monitoring the tunnel's pressure sensors, activated a noise cancellation field, masking any sounds Dante made from detection. Then, he ran the scheduled System Flush command, temporarily disabling biometric tracking in the Level 0 quadrant under the guise of thermal maintenance. By 2:21 a.m., Dante emerged from the tunnel into an unmarked utility room, one of several built for emergency overflow during the facility's original construction. It hadn't been used in over a decade. Here, Volkov had stashed a disguise, guard's uniform, ID badge, contact lenses, and a portable biometric scrambler. Once dressed, Dante walked out the side door of the room and into the administrative corridor like he belonged there. At 2:33 a.m., Dante reached the first security checkpoint. Cameras scanned his face. The badge matched. The gate matched. The iris scan blinked green. Authorized. It was Volkov's finest work, spoofed credentials embedded directly into the prison's ID database for less than 90 seconds, just long enough for Dante to pass through. The record self-erased immediately after. Next came the drone bay, where he would hitch a ride out. Yes, on a drone. Volkov had reprogrammed one of the outgoing surveillance drones to accept additional weight, disable its internal camera, and route through a blind zone created during a routine exterior sweep. Dante climbed inside the drone's service compartment, barely large enough to curl into, and sealed the hatch. At 2:48 a.m., the drone launched. No alarms, no guards alerted. Not even the AI noticed anything unusual. It flew across the outer perimeter and into the mountain range surrounding Blackthorn, eventually dropping into a ravine where a pre-buried extraction crate waited. Clothes, money, burner phones, false passports. By dawn, Dante Sombra had disappeared without a single trace. The only proof he had ever existed came during the 6 a.m. head count, when guards found a body in the bed that wasn't breathing, but wasn't cold either. Only then did the illusion collapse, and taped to the underside of the drone hatch, found later during diagnostics, another ace of spades. How he disappeared. Despite a global manhunt. By the time the world learned of Dante Sombra's escape, he was already a ghost once more. Interpol launched the largest manhunt in decades. Over 70 nations participated. Satellite networks were rerouted to scan the terrain surrounding Blackthorn. Every drone was grounded, analyzed, and searched. Checkpoints at airports, borders, and shipping docks were on red alert. Hundreds of tips flooded in, most false, some bizarre, yet not a single camera, scanner, or sensor in the entire global surveillance web caught even a glimpse of him. That's because Dante hadn't just escaped a prison, he'd escaped the entire grid. At 6:45 a.m., less than 5 hours after his drone exit, a hiker in a remote alpine region of northern Norway reported seeing a strange silver pod in a ravine. Local police investigated, but found nothing, only flattened grass and the faint smell of heated metal. By the time international agents arrived, a storm had erased everything. Meanwhile, a cargo vessel en route to Greenland received an automated distress call from an unregistered weather balloon. The captain later admitted he altered course to investigate and brought aboard a sealed container floating in the Arctic waters. The container was supposed to hold salvage equipment. Instead, it carried a man in a deep hibernation pod, pre-programmed to mimic hypothermic symptoms, complete with falsified vitals and embedded ID chips, marking him as a United Nations research scientist. That man was not Dante Sombra, but he looked close enough. It was bait. While authorities scrambled to detain the look-alike and trace the pod's signal, the real Dante was already miles away, traveling under an identity built not weeks or months earlier, but years ago. You see, Dante didn't improvise. Every move was calculated, every exit had a backup. The moment he entered Blackthorn, he knew how he'd leave it. The drone? A distraction? The crate? A decoy? The satellite heat signature trail? Spoofed, using thermal dummies. The entire manhunt was chasing phantoms, crafted by Volkov and planted long before the escape began. Where was Dante really? A week after the escape, a private plane under a Venezuelan diplomatic registry made an unscheduled refueling stop in the Canary Islands. Surveillance cameras caught a man in tinted aviators and a gray scarf stepping out for exactly 8 minutes. The footage was grainy, but analysts noted something chilling. Taped to the underside of a bench where he briefly sat was a playing card, another ace of spades, a final breadcrumb, a signature maybe, or maybe a taunt, and Volkov, still missing. Interpol believes he used Dante's escape to vanish as well, most likely via a secondary tunnel connected to Blackthorn's construction-era evacuation shafts. Some speculate the two are working together. Others believe Volkov was just a pawn, discarded once the escape was complete. But here's what we know. Since that day, no diamond thefts have been reported that match Dante's pattern. No high-profile heists, no vanishing gems, nothing. Why? Some say he's retired. Others think he's waiting, watching. Theories abound. Some believe he's in South America, living under a new identity. Others are convinced he's deep in the cyber underground, operating through proxies and AI shells. A few claim he's dead, his final trick disappearing from the world completely. But then, exactly 1 year after the escape, a small museum in Antwerp opened its vault to find their showcased diamond missing. No signs of entry, no alarms, just an empty case, and taped to the inside of the glass, the ace of spades. Dante Sombra was gone, but the ghost had returned.